When you master your emotions, you master your energy. And when you master your energy, you master how people experience you. Most people live in reaction. They are easily triggered, easily swayed, and easily available. Their emotions are dictated by external factors, by what someone says, what someone does, or worse, what someone doesn't do. And when you are predictable in your emotional responses, you become ordinary. You become someone whose presence is expected and whose absence is easily dismissed. But the moment you learn to regulate your emotions, the moment you no longer react the way people expect, something shifts. You create mystery. You create a gap between what they knew of you and what they now see. And that gap is what makes people start paying attention. Because people don't crave what is easy to understand. They crave what challenges them. And an emotionally stable person is one of the most challenging presences to encounter. Think about it. How often do people push your buttons just to see if they still have an effect on you? How often does someone withdraw their attention, not because they don't care, but because they want to see how you will respond? It is human nature to test boundaries. But when you reach a place where your emotional state is no longer at the mercy of external triggers, you become magnetic because suddenly they don't know where they stand with you, and uncertainty creates desire. Imagine being in a conversation where someone expects you to react a certain way, maybe with frustration, maybe with desperation, maybe with over-explaining, but instead you are calm, you are composed, you are aware of your emotions, but you do not let them control you. That moment alone shifts the dynamic because now they are no longer in control of how you feel, you are. And nothing makes a person more curious than someone you cannot easily figure out. This isn't about playing games. It's not about pretending to be detached while secretly waiting for validation. It's about truly mastering yourself, about understanding that your emotions are your responsibility. When you become emotionally regulated, you become rare, and rarity creates value. You stop being someone who can be emotionally manipulated. You stop being someone who is easily accessible, not just physically, but emotionally. And that is what people miss the most. Not just your presence, but the emotional energy you once poured into them. When you are always there, always reacting, always available, they never had to think about your absence. But when you shift, when you regulate your emotions and refuse to be moved by external forces, they start to notice. They start to wonder. They start to feel that something is missing. And that feeling grows because emotions are energy. And when your energy is no longer invested in them, it creates a void, one that only your presence can fill. Now, here's where it becomes even more powerful. When you master your emotions, you also master how you show up in life. You radiate confidence. You radiate peace. You are no longer seeking validation because you have already validated yourself. And people can sense that. They may not be able to explain it, but they feel it. And what they feel, they remember. Because most people are not used to encountering someone who is truly in control of themselves. This is why emotional regulation is one of the most powerful ways to make your absence deeply felt, not because you are trying to make someone miss you, but because your absence now carries weight. When you are no longer an open book, when your emotions are no longer available on demand, people realize what they once had. And that realization lingers. Because at the end of the day, people don't miss just anyone. They miss the ones who were different, the ones who stood out, the ones they could not replace. So the question is, are you willing to become that person? Are you willing to master yourself to the point where your presence is no longer taken for granted? If so, then understand this. Your emotions are your power. Guard them, master them, and watch how the world responds. Attachment creates expectation. Expectation creates dependence. And dependence creates a loss of control. When you are attached to an outcome, to a response, or to the presence of someone in your life, you unknowingly give your power away. You allow your emotions to be dictated by forces outside of you. But the moment you detach, the moment you release the need for validation, approval, or reassurance, something shifts. You reclaim your energy. And when you reclaim your energy, your absence is felt in a way that is undeniable. People are drawn to what they cannot fully grasp. When you are deeply attached to someone, they feel it. They know that no matter what they do, you will always be there, always waiting, always available. And because of that certainty, they stop valuing your presence. But the second that attachment disappears, the second you no longer react, chase, or expect, they notice. They may not admit it, but they feel the void because your energy was once predictable and now it's not. And nothing creates curiosity more than unpredictability. Detachment does not mean you stop caring. It does not mean you become cold or distant. It means you free yourself from the emotional chains that keep you bound to someone else's actions. You no longer seek external confirmation of your worth. You no longer wait for a response to feel validated. You become your own source of fulfillment. And that level of inner security is rare, it is powerful, and it is unforgettable. Think about a time when you were overly invested in someone, when you over-explained, over-apologized, over-gave. Did it make them value you more, or did it make them pull away? Most of the time, the more we give, the less it is appreciated. Not because generosity is a flaw, but because anything that is given too freely is often taken for granted. But when you detach, when you become selective with your energy, people begin to recognize what they once overlooked. When you step back, you create space. And in that space, people are forced to confront their own feelings. They start wondering why you are no longer reaching out, why you are no longer reacting, why your energy is shifted. And that wondering turns into longing, because human nature is wired to want what is no longer easily available. Your detachment makes them reflect. It forces them to evaluate what they had and what they lost. This is why people often realize someone's value only after they are gone. Not because they didn't care before, but because they never had to question their presence. When something is always there, it blends into the background. But when it is removed, it creates contrast. And contrast creates awareness. When you detach, you take back control of your own mind. You are no longer obsessing over what someone else is thinking or doing. You are no longer seeking validation outside of yourself. And that mental freedom allows you to focus on yourself, on your growth, your peace, your transformation. The irony is, the more you shift your attention inward, the more others begin to shift their attention toward you, because energy speaks louder than words. And when your energy is no longer directed at them, they feel it. They sense the shift, and it unsettles them. Most people are not used to losing access to someone's emotions. They are used to knowing that no matter what they do, the other person will still be there. But when you detach, when you no longer need them to act a certain way for you to be at peace, the dynamic changes. They are left with nothing to control, nothing to push against. And in that emptiness, they feel your absence more deeply than ever before. This is why true detachment is not about ignoring or pretending not to care. It is about genuinely reaching a place where your happiness is not dependent on someone else, where you can love but not cling, where you can appreciate but not expect. And when you reach that level, you no longer have to wonder whether someone misses you, because they will, not just for what you gave them, but for the energy you once provided, the energy they can no longer access. People don't miss what stays the same. They miss what changes, what evolves, what they can no longer reach in the way they once did. The greatest way to make your absence deeply felt is to become someone unrecognizable to the version of you they once knew. Because when you transform, you create a disconnect between their memories of you and the reality of who you have become. And that disconnect is what lingers in their mind, making them realize that what they once had is no longer available. Mm. Most people stay predictable. They repeat the same habits, respond the same way, and carry the same energy. This makes them easy to understand, easy to dismiss. But when you shift, when you grow beyond your old patterns, you create something rare. And what is rare is valuable. When they realize that the version of you they were once familiar with no longer exists, they feel the void. Because now they no longer know how to access you. They no longer know how to fit into your life. And that uncertainty makes them feel your absence on a deeper level. Transformation is powerful because it forces people to see you differently. Maybe they once thought they could come back anytime, that you would always be there, unchanged, waiting. But when they see that you have evolved mentally, emotionally, physically, they are faced with a truth they did not expect. You are no longer within their reach, not because you are physically gone, but because you are no longer the same. And nothing unsettles people more than realizing they no longer hold the same place in your life. When you work on yourself, when you shift your mindset, your habits, your energy, people feel it. They may not always be able to explain it, but they sense that something is different. Maybe they once took your kindness for granted, assuming you would always give without hesitation, but now you have boundaries. Maybe they once felt secure knowing they had an effect on your emotions, but now you are calm, unshaken, indifferent. And that shift in energy is what makes them start questioning everything. Growth creates distance, not because you push people away, but because you rise to a level where not everyone can follow. And that distance is what makes your absence felt so intensely. They look at you and realize they no longer have access to the same version of you, the one who is always available, always reactive, always attached. That version is gone, and in its place is someone stronger, wiser, and harder to reach. This is why focusing on yourself is never a waste of time. When you become more, you naturally demand more. You no longer tolerate the same dynamics, the same cycles, the same energy. And that change forces people to reassess their position in your life. They start to see that they are no longer a priority, no longer in control, no longer capable of affecting you in the way they once did. And that realization lingers because people do not miss what they still have access to. They miss what they lost. Transformation is not about proving anything to anyone. It's not about making someone regret losing you. It's about stepping into your highest self, into your fullest potential. And in doing so, you naturally create the kind of absence that cannot be ignored. Because you are no longer the same. You are no longer waiting. You are no longer accessible in the way they assumed you would always be. And that is what makes them feel your absence more than anything else. Silence is powerful because it forces people to listen. When you stop explaining, stop chasing, stop filling the space with unnecessary words, something interesting happens. People start to notice your absence in a way they never did before. Most people are used to noise. They are used to immediate responses, constant engagement, predictable reactions. But when you take that away, when you withdraw your energy and allow silence to take its place, it creates discomfort, and discomfort leads to reflection. People often assume that their presence is what makes an impact, but it is actually their absence that reveals the most. When you were always available, always explaining yourself, always making sure they knew how you felt, they never had to wonder, they never had to question. But the moment you stop, the moment you choose silence over reaction, they are left alone with their thoughts. And in that space, they begin to realize what they never truly appreciated before. Silence is not about ignoring or punishing. It's about choosing where to place your energy. When you stop speaking, stop engaging, stop reacting to the things that once triggered you, people feel the shift. They feel the weight of what is missing. And because human nature is wired for pattern recognition, they start looking for you in the places where you once were. But you are no longer there. You have removed yourself, and now they must sit with that reality. When someone is used to your constant validation, your emotional investment, your predictable presence, they become comfortable. They assume they will always have access to you. But when you become silent, when you stop explaining, when you remove your energy from the dynamic, you force them to reconsider everything. They begin to wonder if they miscalculated, if they took you for granted, if they assumed too much. And that questioning lingers far longer than any words you could have spoken. Silence makes people reflect because it removes distraction. When you argue, when you explain, when you try to make someone understand, you are giving them an escape from their own thoughts. But when you step back, when you allow silence to speak for you, they are left with no choice but to sit with the consequences of their actions. They may have dismissed your words before, but they cannot dismiss the absence of them. Because in that absence, they start to feel the loss. The most unforgettable presence is the one that can be felt even in silence. When you cultivate the ability to walk away without explanation, to disengage without resentment, to remove yourself without drama, you become unforgettable. Not because you are forcing someone to miss you, but because your energy was once a presence in their life, and now it is not. And the contrast between what was and what is now is what creates impact. People are not used to silence. They are used to reactions, to explanations, to closure. But true power lies in knowing that silence itself is the only closure you need. When you no longer feel the need to justify your absence, when you no longer feel the need to prove your worth through words, you create a space where others are forced to acknowledge it for themselves. And that acknowledgement is far more powerful than anything you could have said. When you were always available, they never had to think about you. But now, with your silence, they are left to wonder, and wondering leads to remembering, remembering leads to missing, missing leads to realization, and realization leads to regret. This is why silence is louder than words. It does not demand attention, but it commands it. It does not beg for acknowledgement, but it receives it. And in that quiet, powerful space, your absence is felt in a way that cannot be ignored. Attention is currency. Wherever you place it, you invest your energy, your time, and your power. When you constantly focus on someone, wondering what they're thinking, waiting for their validation, reacting to their actions, you are unconsciously giving them control over you. But the moment you shift that focus back to yourself, everything changes because people don't truly value what is always directed at them. They value what they have to earn. Most people make the mistake of thinking that presence alone creates impact. But in reality, it's where your energy flows that determines your significance. When you were always available, always seeking, always giving without question, they never had to wonder about you. They never had to question their place in your life because your attention reassured them constantly. The moment you pull back, the moment you redirect your focus onto yourself, your growth, your goals, your peace, they start to feel your absence in ways they never anticipated. It is human nature to want what seems just out of reach. When your energy was centered around them, it was easy to take it for granted. But now you are focused on your own path. You are prioritizing your own evolution, your own journey. And that shift is unsettling because suddenly they are no longer at the center of your world. Suddenly they have to question where they stand. And in that questioning, they feel the weight of what they once had. You have probably experienced this before. The more you chased, the more they pulled away. The more you gave, the less they valued it. Not because your presence wasn't meaningful, but because anything that is constantly available is rarely appreciated. But when you stop pouring your energy into someone else and start investing in yourself, the dynamic changes. You become the one who is focused, driven, evolving. And people are drawn to movement, to transformation, to things they cannot easily grasp. This isn't about manipulation. It's not about withholding attention as a strategy. It's about genuinely realizing that your energy is too valuable to be spent on people who do not reciprocate it. When you truly internalize that, when you start focusing on your own expansion, they feel it. They sense the shift in your energy. And that shift makes them start paying attention in ways they never did before. Your absence is felt most deeply when you are no longer emotionally invested in proving your worth. When you stop explaining yourself, when you stop waiting for recognition, when you stop needing to be seen in a certain way. Instead, you become someone who is simply living, growing, and moving forward. And that movement creates a distance between who you were and who you are now, a distance they can no longer close as easily as they once could. This is why focusing on yourself is the most powerful thing you can do, not just to make someone feel your absence, but to elevate yourself to a level where you no longer seek what once drained you, where you no longer give your energy to things that do not uplift you, where you become the version of yourself that commands attention, not by asking for it, but by being someone who is naturally unforgettable. People are drawn to those who are fully in their own power. When your attention is no longer fixated on them, when your energy is no longer easily accessible, they start to feel the shift. And that shift creates longing, not for the old version of you that was always waiting, but for the new version of you that they can no longer reach. Because now you are no longer giving them the privilege of your focus. And that is something they cannot ignore. Emotional control is the key to power. The moment someone can predict your reactions, they can manipulate your emotions. They know what will make you anxious, what will make you chase, what will make you seek validation. But when you master the ability to remain unshaken, when your peace is no longer dependent on external factors, you become someone they can no longer control. And that absence of control is what makes them feel your presence even more. People expect emotional responses. They expect frustration, sadness, over-explanations, because that's what they've seen before. But when you break that pattern, when you stop reacting, stop explaining, stop giving them the satisfaction of seeing you unsettled, you shift the dynamic entirely. You no longer play into their expectations. And that unpredictability creates curiosity. It makes them wonder what changed, why they can no longer affect you in the way they once did. And that wondering turns into longing. Mastering your emotions is not about suppressing how you feel. It's about choosing where to direct your energy. It's about understanding that your peace is not something to be easily disturbed. When you were emotionally reactive, they always knew where they stood with you. Your emotions gave them reassurance, even if they mistreated you, because they knew they still had power over your mind. But now, with your composure, with your quiet confidence, they have no idea what you're thinking. And that uncertainty creates an absence that is deeply felt. Nothing is more unsettling than someone who no longer reacts the way you expect. When you used to respond immediately, now you take your time. When you used to explain yourself, now you simply let your actions speak. When you used to get upset, now you remain calm. And that calmness is what shakes them. Because they expected the old version of you, the one who was predictable, the one who cared enough to fight for their attention. But now they are faced with a version of you they no longer recognize, a version that is distant, unbothered, and untouchable. Your absence is not just about physical distance, it's about emotional unavailability. It's about no longer allowing your emotions to be controlled by someone else's presence or absence. The more at peace you are, the more your absence is felt. Because people expect noise, they expect reaction, they expect energy to be given freely. But when you remove yourself from that cycle, when you choose silence over argument, self respect over validation, peace over drama, you force them to sit with themselves. And that is something most people are not prepared for. There's a certain power in becoming emotionally independent. You no longer crave reassurance, no longer seek closure, no longer need them to acknowledge your worth, because you already know it. And when you reach that place, you become unforgettable. Not for the attention you once gave, but for the presence they can no longer access. They will feel your absence, not just because you are gone, but because they can no longer affect you. And that realization will stay with them longer than any words ever could.